Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the September 10th Community Advisory Council meeting. I'm Lorena Barrera, representing the 3rd District. We'll go around the room and introduce ourselves. And I just want to remind everyone to speak slowly as there is interpretation taking place as we speak.
Nancy, Pemberton, District 5.
Brent Kidder, Lieutenant with the Sheriff's Office, Sonoma County.
Imelda Martínez de Montano, en el Distrito 5.
Oh, sorry.
Sean,
Sorry, Jen.
Sean Azevedo, District 4.
Robin Jers, District 1.
Nathan Solomon, District 1.
Lisa Camacho with ILF.
And we have John attending virtually today. And several members of the public joining us at the table, for anyone who I am seeing new faces. And we have, Trevor Ward, joining us as well from District 3. So, we will move on to approval of the August 13 meeting minutes. Are there any comments from the CAC members?
I have one edit at page, the top of page 3. It's the description between, the difference between case notifications and
Information.
request. And we're gonna try this, so that the last sentence will be request for information or request about an individual's custody status. And that's the best we can do. I mean, the difference between notifications and requests is really small, and so that's probably all you.
Can you say what the wording is again? Request about,
The request for the last sentence. in
Yeah.
that first paragraph, request for information or request about an individual's custody status.
oh, okay.
Any other comments? Any public comment on the minutes? Looks like we have no one in the room, no one online, so we'll bring it back for a motion as amended.
So moved.
Thank you, Robin. Is there a second? Thank you, John. All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Just a quick note.
Yes.
In the Spanish translation, the pages aren't the same and the phrasing isn't actually translated correctly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and is there any nays? Abstentions?
Wasn't here.
Thank you. The motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 3, current member attendance, openings and appointments. This is the first time that we report on member attendance. And we didn't get a chance to put the attendance record in the packet, but I did print it out and we'll go over it. So in our bylaws, there's a section on attendance at regular community meetings. Which states that members are expected to attend at least 3/4 of regular meetings during a 12-month period. And we don't state if it's in a calendar year or fiscal year, but we do state that it should be 9 of 12 regular meetings. So luckily, Lizette's been really good at keeping track of our records, and I went back and looked at the fiscal year 24-25 and the current calendar year 25. And we have amazing attendance from Robin, Nate, and John Azevedo. Thank you so much. We have some members that do need to improve their attendance at meetings. And I think those individuals know who they are, and I just want to emphasize that attendance is important because it affects quorum and our ability to meet publicly. And it's reflective of our commitment to our fellow CAC members. And more importantly, the community that we represent. So we want to be fully engaged, make use of our diverse perspectives, and uphold our responsibilities as appointees. So please make sure that you're attending at least 9 of the 12 meetings as required by the bylaws that we all voted to approve. And then again, on openings and appointments, we still have an opening in District 2. And that's it on that item. Moving on to oral reports and comments, we will start with the sheriff's liaison.
All right, good evening. So for community engagement, it looks like, when I spoke with, not the CEL, but, the person who's running community engagement right now. She told me that the events this time of year often slow down, so there's not as many, which actually might be good for our timing, because I know that often takes up a lot of time. This past month, Sheriff's Office personnel took place in the Alexander Valley Coat meeting. Engaged in a Brooks Creek Senior Center sit down. They attended the African Soul Festival, which I actually didn't know anything about, so I looked into it a little bit. It's a celebration for African culture. Contains food, music, and other entertainment. And it's something that the sheriff's office is invited to yearly on an annual basis. And then we've also attended an event called Ride a Rig, which is another event I wasn't aware of. What happens in our county? And it's held at the fairgrounds, and it's an opportunity for children to come and see and touch and crawl all over different sorts of vehicles that are important to the community. And so the sheriff's office, we attended that, and we brought our Bearcat vehicle for the kids to thoroughly enjoy. And then the sheriff's office PIO continues to meet with Spanish radio regularly. From Blister. Community engagement's focus has been on disaster preparedness due to fire season that we are now in, although the moisture is a good thing that we've had lately. Reiterate some of the things that the community can do to prepare themselves is know the difference between an evacuation warning and an evacuation order. Know your zone. If you don't know, the county is divided into specific zones. So knowing your zone is important when it comes to evacuation warnings and orders. If you live on a property that's got a gate that's or secured behind a gate, make sure you register your gate code with the sheriff's office. Which you can do by calling the 565-2121 non-emergency line, or you can do it online. Wait a second. I'm sorry, what was that number? 565-2121. Or you can do it on the website. You can also pick up an evacuation tag. Those are free at any sheriff's office station, so the main office or any of the valley substations or the police departments. At most fire stations. And the purpose of those is in the event of a natural disaster or any other instance where there's an evacuation. The post the tag somewhere that's visible so first responders can see it and go about, know that there's no one in that residence. And then the last thing you can do is sign up for the various alerts that we have. So like Nixle or SoCo alerts. In the sheriff's monthly newsletter, something that I'll just touch on too, I think he titled it the changes you can see. Some of you may or may not have noticed. The sheriff's office uniforms have changed. And so have our patrol vehicles, where they're in the process of changing, because the vehicles are a lot slower than uniforms. Uniforms instead of the standard tan and green that, I don't know how long we've had it, very long time. We're going to an all green uniform, so a dark green shirt, dark green pants. And those that wear the vest carriers, they're also green. And then our vehicles, instead of that white with the green letters that y'all might recognize, we're going to the standard black and white with some updated graphics, and some more traditional look. So some of the purposes of that is, again, the title of the excerpt was changes you can see. It's a sharper, more unified look. We're hoping that it sparks conversation with community members that, again, recognize that the older versions of the uniforms of the vehicles, and maybe it's an opportunity to engage in a conversation with community members. Specific to the patrol cars, black and white's a little bit more visible, recognizable, as opposed to all white ones that just kind of blend in with everything else, especially ones that don't have the lights on top. And then overall, just the visual representation, some of the changes that the sheriff's office has made. Again, just trying to be more approachable, just more community oriented. Regarding the ICE information that I'm gonna be reporting on monthly. As it was last time, nothing's just changed with the sheriff's office regarding ICE related procedures. The statistics for the month of August are as follows. Notifications received from ICE, there was 51 of them. There were 6 requests for information from ICE. And of those 51 notifications, only 4 of them were returned to ICE.
What does that mean? I returned.
Returned, so
It responded to.
yeah, respond.
And those so many possible requests, needed with that.
And then again, there were no arrests by ICE in the detention facility. I recall last meeting, there was a question about the trends regarding these statistics. How far back, we'll go from the beginning of the year, last couple of months, what do we all want? Last couple of months. So let's go with May, there were 37 notifications received. June, there were 50. July, there were 57. August, there were 51. Regarding the notification returned to ICE, so in May, again, there was 37, only 3 were returned. In June of the 50, there were only 6 that were returned. In July of the 57, only 4 were returned. And then again, this month, only 4 of the 51 were returned. And then regarding the request for information, in May, there were 16 requests. In June, there were 13 requests. In July, there were 8 requests. In August, there were only 6 requests. And there was not an arrest in either of those months. That's really like it.
Do this kind of better. Now we'll move on to, Dawn Alvin,
We have questions though for that presentation?
At the end.
after.
Oh, okay. All right. Good.
Okay.
Hi, evening. Sorry not to be there in person. I am appearing virtually tonight because I had the joy of being exposed to COVID recently, and I'm fine, but I'm still in that window where it's possible I could be feeling fine, but not be safe to be around all of you. So I checked in with the chair and the vice chair, and we all thought, in an abundance of caution, better if I showed up virtually. So thanks for bearing with that. There are a few things that I'd like to talk about tonight. One of them is, of course, our report on the shooting of David Pelaez Chavez. We have that set aside as an agenda item a little later in the agenda, so I'll give a slightly longer presentation there, and including talking about some other ways you can get more information about that case. In other news, I was reappointed to another 3-year term as your ILO director. So thank you. And thanks to the Board of Supervisors for doing that. I appreciate the trust that they've given to me to hold on to this trust from the public to manage ILO well and to make sure we're continuing to create accountability and transparency and hopefully policy improvements that everybody in the community can support and get behind. Last month, several of us went to a NACOL regional conference that was held in San Francisco. Pre-COVID, NACOL used to have these regional conferences pretty regularly and is only just now starting to get back into them post-COVID. There was one in New York earlier in the year that a lot of people in the Northeast attended, and this one had a little over 100 attendees, if I remember correctly. And so it had a great turnout and some really interesting speakers, and a lot of them local folks that have done a lot of work in and around oversight that you might not get to see at the National NACOL conference, because some of them just don't always travel that far. So I really appreciated that and appreciated some of the help we got from some other agencies, and some of our people attended and helped out too. You know, it's good to see that collaboration. NACOL's national conference is going to be next month, and several of us are going to that in Minneapolis. So we'll, I'm sure, have more to tell you at our November meeting about how that went in late October. And then other than that, you know, we've been doing a variety of public events like the Soul Festival that you heard the lieutenant mention. If we have a moment or two and you want to add something, Lizette, about recent outreach efforts, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, John.
There is a sheet that's going around with upcoming events. We have it's El Grito Fest in downtown Santa Rosa that is happening September 16th. And there's also a charla with the Vice Mayor of Santa Rosa that is happening at the Santa Rosa City Chambers the same day, September 16th at 9 in the morning. There's more on that list, so make sure you sign up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then on CAC public correspondence, we don't have any correspondence to report. So now we'll open it up for questions from CAC members on the reports that were provided. You want to start, Nate?
Oh, sure. Lieutenant Kidder, I was curious, for the uniforms, how much does it cost to replace all the uniforms for sheriff's office? As a taxpayer, I'm just curious to hear what, I mean, you can report back later, but
It's not like we just hauled off, we went and purchased 300, well, I guess it'd be closer to 700 uniforms per person. So every year we get a chit it's called a chit, right, to go replace uniforms. So when that time comes around, the new chit is only good for those green uniforms. So as of January, everybody's mandated to wear the green uniforms. We started rolling them out actually a few months ago. So if your time for that chit had come up before then, you had the option to go to County Green or green. But then come January, all the new chits are gonna be green only, and as of January, you should not see any tan green at all. But it's not like we just had to haul off of it and put in a whole bunch of stuff.
Gotcha. It's just like when they're due for the next round, you just say, we're changed, okay, gotcha.
So like for example, when I got promoted in October, I still had County Green uniforms. I had the option, knowing that this was rolling out, for my chit, for my promotion to be green. And so that's what I opted.
Gotcha. Okay, I had one more question, but you go.
No, go ahead.
No. And then the information requests, like the ICE stuff. Is the sheriff's department anticipating an increase in requests going forward due to the increase in funding? Or no, for DHS?
I don't have any specific information on that. I mean, again, the trends are pretty consistent going across. I don't know that we're anticipating any increase or decrease unless it happens. I don't know that we're anticipating anything.
Gotcha, okay.
I can go back and ask, but maybe the folks that deal with these statistics and deal with this a lot more than I do. But I have not been notified that we're anticipating any specific increase. And even though we're across the year, it's been pretty, the request for, did you say notifications or information?
Both, yeah, all of it.
They're just going across the board. So
Yeah.
January was 45, February was 46, March 47, April 43, May 37, June 50, July 57, August 51.
Yeah.
So, 39 being the lowest, 57 being the highest, fairly consistent.
Yeah, but tracking up,
Not a statistician
Yeah.
by any means.
definitely tracking up, but yeah, okay, I got you. Yep, sounds good, thanks.
Good.
I don't have a question, I have a comment, and I'm it's curious to me that, the vehicles are going to black and white so that they're more visible. To me, they blend in more with the other law enforcement. I mean, I think it's harder for people to know what's a sheriff's, vehicle and what's the municipal law enforcement. And every time I see a white one, I know it's a sheriff. So it's just, that's an interesting,
Yeah.
that you're doing.
I think it's not that we're trying to differentiate ourselves as just the sheriff's office, it's law enforcement, and it's more visible as a law enforcement.
Yeah, that's- yeah, I-
Black and white on these
Yeah,
cars,
yes.
recognizing it, but it's
Absolutely.
white.
Yes,
And so that's my understanding of that.
that makes sense, yeah.
So, a few months, like probably 6 months ago, you reported on staffing and, our recruitment was going well, and can you update us on maybe where that is? Is that continuing to track pretty well, or how's it going?
So staffing, two facets, right? We've got the detention side and the law enforcement side. It's split in two parts, detention, and then law enforcement. The detention side is about as full as we can get. Taking into account people are going out on 4850, it happens fairly frequently, or they're retiring, that sort of thing, so. 6 months, well, about a year ago, it was way less, and the detention side is now back up to speed, which is a great thing. The patrol side was doing well, and now we're starting to dip a little bit, again, due to injuries or what have you. So we're always looking to hire, always looking to recruit, to try to fill the vacancies that are always happening. Every time we try to get full staff, something happens, we're not, but definitely overall better than it was. If that answers it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the CAC members?
In your statistics for, these notifications and requests, and I know that you don't necessarily have the answer, When you report, you say that there were X number of notifications and there were Y number of responses to those notifications. Then you say there's X number of requests, but no responses. Is that because you don't respond to requests?
You know, just not having work in it, I'm not gonna sit here and
Speculate.
and speculate or provide false information, so I'll go back and double check that. My understanding is that we'll respond to the notification, but maybe, yeah.
Okay.
But I'll go back and double check that.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You. Okay, we'll open it up to public comment on the reports, and we'll start with individuals in the room. Any public comment? Ms. Susan?
Yeah, I just want to confirm, that I'm thinking about this the right way. When you say that there are no arrests, you're saying that's within the jail itself. Once they're released, you don't know, I know that ICE doesn't have to tell you. And so it means that you simply don't keep track of it.
Correct, the statistic is there's no arrests inside the secure facility.
Right. I just want to make sure.
Any other comments? And we'll take all the comments first and then, bring it back to it. Okay. Anyone online? Nope. Okay, we'll close public comment on the reports and move on to our business items. So we have one business item, discussion on CAC bylaws, Article 3, Section 2B4, and possible action. I just want to say that we added the possible action in case our discussion leads to anything we want to change or do, then vote on. But we just kind of brought it up because, from my experience as, someone who works in local government, and just over time, we've noticed there's appointees who are active community members. And then sometimes forget to announce their speaking roles at meetings. And also when contacting elected officials. And maybe I should actually read this section, in case, people didn't do that. So that section that we're discussing says, and it should be translated in the Spanish packet. CAC members are encouraged to represent themselves as individual CAC members in community advocacy and activities related to the adopted positions and work plan of the CAC. And are not to work to undermine the adopted positions and work plan of the CAC while serving as members. However, they are not authorized to represent, speak, or act on behalf of the CAC as a whole through any means, including through personal social media accounts, unless so authorized by the CAC. Members of the CAC should add an opinion disclaimer to their personal accounts in order to establish clarification that opinions shared on social media are not representative of the CAC. So I have also seen comments on Facebook and by individuals, like through a post. And then the comments on that post go into conversations related to the work of the body that person serves on. And elected officials can confuse themselves on the approach that individuals are taking if we contact them and we don't state that we're speaking as individuals and not as members of such a body. Yeah.
Entonces hay un poco confusión en cuanto a eso. Cuando la persona está poniendo alguna información o noticia sin hacer la representación específica de cómo está sucediendo, debe expresar, eso no es confusión para la persona para entender su papel, cómo están los padres, o culpa de la aplicación. Con quién está representando los momentos, con qué clase de información.
So we wanted to bring this up as a reminder for everyone and also thought it would be good to bring up for other thoughts or discussion. I know a lot of you have mentioned in the past that you've attended supervisor meetings and things like that, or contacted your supervisors. So it might be good for everyone to start practicing stating when you're speaking, that you're speaking on behalf of yourself and not anybody that you serve.
One of my thoughts is that the paragraph could use a little clarification to say that we should not only make a disclaimer on the social media accounts, but we should make that disclaimer when we're speaking to members of the public or to elected officials, and we're not speaking specifically on behalf of the CAC. As an example, I went to the board of supervisors meeting when they were considering John's contract, and I spoke, and those people know, you know, certainly Supervisor Hopkins, and I think a number of other ones know me as a member of the CAC. So I made clear that I'm not speaking on behalf of the CAC, I was speaking on behalf of myself. And I just thought that it might make sense for us to add a sentence in this.
Just a little bit slower, please.
Oh, I'll wait, go ahead.
No. You wanted to make it clear that you were speaking.
That I was speaking on my, we might want to make clear in the here that when we speak on issues related to the CAC, we make clear whether or not we're speaking on that. So that would be the possible action.
It's very thin line because, because if people know you're on the CAC and you are speaking at a public event, I've gone to Board of Supervisors meetings and stood up and spoken. Not as I've actually done it officially as a CAC member because I was sent there to do it. But also there's a number of times that I've wanted to stand up and say something. And it's, I don't know, there is a very fine line between people's interpretation of what you're saying and your intention of what you're saying. And I mean, I think the disclaimer is a very good idea, and I think it should be universal and not just social media. I agree with that. But I find it's kind of a challenge. And I mean, like I've wanted to participate in some of the, demonstrations that have happened outside the Board of Supervisors. And some people know I'm on the CAC, maybe I could wear a little badge, non-CAC. I'm not kidding, but anyway, I think you know what I'm talking about, but it's.
I don't think anyone should take it as you can't be active in things that are important to you. But just if you speak to anyone and they know what you're appointed to, just state it. And how they interpret it is not in our control,
Yeah.
but I think making it clear, hey, I'm at this protest as Robin and not as a CAC
Right.
member, I think is helpful. And so that's why we thought it would be good to bring it up. We do our part, and however elected officials or community members interpret it is on them, but we're stating what we want to be involved in and what our interests are by our presence or our freedom of speech, and we have no control over how it's interpreted, and we shouldn't. refrain from being active, in things that are of interest to us as.
Yeah,
people.
okay, that's good clarification for me. Thank you.
Can I just provide some context, because, yep, you go.
People, poco, del movimiento, parecen.
Go ahead, Nate.
So the reason this came up, just to let everyone know, because it's confusing when these things get brought up and there's no context. A few weeks ago, I sent an email to my supervisor and Supervisor Hopkins to encourage them to create a task force or ad hoc on ICE. Because I felt it was important. It was an important issue for them to dig into and to bring together some of the heads of law enforcement and the DA to discuss their approach. I didn't put the disclaimer that I was speaking only as a citizen and not as a CAC member. And so when I spoke to others on the CAC, they were concerned about that. And they were also concerned that I was maybe stepping on toes for our community engagement about ICE ad hoc. So that's what started this discussion about the bylaws and all that stuff. So just want to get that out there so everyone's clear on why this started, and I didn't feel like it was appropriate for me to wait a month or two for the CAC to act on that. I wanted the supervisors to act as soon as possible because of the situation our country finds itself in. So that's it.
And to support what Nate said, but also supporting the part where we know that government is slow and we can't talk because we have to have a public meeting, which can be frustrating. So if we're serving on such a body and, for example, ICE and this task force and things like that are the subject matter of the CAC in a way, then when we do make contact, we should add such a disclaimer. But there is no issue with contacting representatives or elected officials as residents of Sonoma County. So, yeah, I would say government is very slow. Any comments?
Well, will this go back for like to edit it or?
We can, if, we have an idea of a statement now, we can bring it up and make a motion to amend that section of the bylaws now. So we don't have to wait and bring it back next time.
I absolutely positive.
Of course you do.
Well, before we do that though, if there's no, there are no more comments from CAC members, we'll open it up to the public for comments. Anyone? Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, it would be great if Nancy has suggestions, that's a nice little bright line. Comment for folks saying, say this when you're doing your statements, and that way you just get used to, that's what I'm gonna say when I'm doing my thing. You know, and it just makes it easy to share for folks. I have made these kind of statements, and I don't have a right line statement to make, so I fumble through it and I do it very awkwardly. It's clear, and so if it be simple, it's clear, I'm gonna be looking hard.
Thank you. Any other comments?
On anything?
It would be on the business item that we just discussed. It doesn't look like we have hands raised online, so we'll close public comment and bring it back for a discussion and a possible motion. So we'll start with Nancy and bring up your proposed amendment.
This may be a little too much, but I'll just read it out. So if you look at that paragraph 4, where it says, after the sentence that begins, however, they are not authorized to represent the public. Does that
What
would
page is
be,
that? I'm sorry, what page is that on?
it's on page 13?
In the English version.
Oh, but I don't know whether you, you have that in Spanish as well.
I just want to know in English, like.
Okay. So following that sentence, where it says unless so authorized by the CAC, members of the CAC should make clear when they are and are not representing, speaking, or acting on behalf of the CAC. For example, quote, I am speaking on behalf of the CAC, or, quote, I am not speaking on behalf of the CAC. And that would be my proposed amendment to
I would just add or acting. I mean, because sometimes you're not speaking, but you're present at something and it could be speaking or acting. It's what,
being acting, representing. Could be any of those.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is an example.
Yeah.
Because that sentence, it's very specific to social media.
Yeah.
So
The
it's,
next sentence is,
Yeah.
I'm leaving that sentence. in.
okay, because I mean, I think we should be more broad with that language, but I don't think we have to do it right this second, but it would be a good update there. Just to make it more clear. I mean, because social media is one channel, but communication happens across the board, so
Well, that's why
that's why you broadened it.
I'm suggesting this amendment, which would be broader.
Yeah. No, I like that.
Within the social media one.
Yeah, okay.
Where would we add?
Yeah.
Okay. So then, if we were to make that amendment, the paragraph starting with the part that says however would read, however, they are not authorized to represent, speak, or act on behalf of the CAC as a whole through any means, including through personal social media accounts, unless so authorized by the CAC. For example,
I am speaking on behalf of the CAC, or I am not speaking on behalf of the CAC. And you could put, if you wanted, we could add, I am not speaking / acting on behalf of the.
Representing is a good word because that's speaking and acting.
Okay.
So I think.
No, I'm not, I am representing the
Yes.
CAC, I am not.
Yes, right.
and then it would continue to say, members of the CAC should add an opinion disclaimer to their personal accounts. Now that I'm thinking out loud, I feel like that sentence shouldn't be in between where we're trying to add it.
How about-
Yes.
I totally support the amendment in concept, but I'm more of a visual person, so I would almost like to see it come back to the next meeting in a written form where we can just say, this is exactly what we're adopting, because the wordsmithing of this, I think, is cumbersome.
I
Okay,
agree.
we could do that.
Yeah.
I'll work with Nancy on that.
Thank you.
But we're okay with the simplicity and like basically what was suggested. Okay. We'll do that and bring it back for a vote at the next meeting. Okay, now we'll move on to our presentation. This is to receive a presentation from Director Alden on the Velez Chavez decision. And I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you. Let me start by saying, I know we have several agenda items tonight, so we probably don't have enough time in the agenda this evening to do this whole matter as much justice as it deserves. But because the CAC is obviously involved in these kinds of issues, I wanted to make sure that we did some presentation here and invite any of you who want to have a more in-depth conversation and get into the details of this case more to come to our town hall on September 22nd. That's going to be at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours if we need. And part of the reason that we have a special event just for that case is because we thought there'd be a number of people who would have questions and want some detail. And that's an opportunity to really dig in. So we'll get into, more detail in the report, share with you some of the publicly available materials from that report virtually online, and we'll have Q&A and discussion as well. There are some limits about some of the things we can talk about in this case. So it could be that in today's presentation and in that presentation, there might be some details we can't provide. But state law currently makes the vast majority of the material that we gathered in a case like this available to the public. So we should be able to cover, most of the questions that people have. We've never done a town hall quite like that before, but it seemed like it was appropriate given that we figured there would be questions, and it is a very, long and complicated report that we issued. So as best we can, we'll point people to, parts of the report where they can find some of the answers, and maybe that's a little more accessible than just reading a really, a very long report. I think that probably most people at this meeting are already familiar with this particular case. It involved an incident on July 29th of 2022 when Sonoma County Sheriff's deputies shot and killed David Pelaez Chavez here in Sonoma County. It was well publicized at the time, and it triggered an immediate set of investigations. One of those investigations, the one that starts first, was a criminal investigation. And that's a criminal investigation into everything that happened. So it's a criminal investigation into the entire situation, and it's supposed to be designed to not make any assumptions about who might have committed a crime, if anybody, but to look at, what happened in the course of the event. Did anyone commit a crime, including potentially members of law enforcement, and what should be done about that? And pursuant to a longstanding protocol that the County of Sonoma has, amongst many different law enforcement agencies, including our sheriff's office, that criminal investigation was led by the Santa Rosa Police Department. So that Santa Rosa Police were able to then investigate the case. They interviewed 2 of the deputies that were involved, Dietrich, who was the one who fired his firearm, and Powers, who had had a taser deployed at the time, or ready to deploy at the time that this event occurred. They were the only 2 deputies who were actually present at the scene when the shooting occurred. That investigation, once it was done, was forwarded to the district attorney. This is also a standard process. And I think, as many of you know, then the district attorney chose not to file charges in that case. The district attorney's job at that point was to look at a couple of things. One, was there any reason why any of these 2 deputies who were involved had committed a crime? They did not look at whether any particular crime might have been committed by David Pelaez Chavez at that point, solely because he had already passed. He died at the scene. So in other kinds of cases, that's something they would have looked at too, but they didn't do that here. After that, after those 2 investigations were done, then ILRO and the sheriff's office were able to begin investigations. At the time that this shooting occurred, the county had just finished up a set of agreements with a variety of labor associations with the County of Sonoma that allowed us to implement Measure P. And part of that was a process for starting independent investigations. So that was one reason why ILRO did an independent investigation into this case, but hasn't done independent investigations into cases earlier, say in 2021 or 2020. Our ability to do that really happened to become present, became actionable just before the shooting occurred. That said, the agreement we had at the time only allowed ILRO to start its independent investigation after the criminal investigation was done, after the district attorney had decided whether to file charges, and after the sheriff's office did an internal review. So one of the first things that happened in this case was that we renegotiated that third part here so that ILRO could start instead of after the sheriff's investigation. We could start at the same time as the sheriff's investigation. So our investigation then started at the same time as the sheriff's office. Simultaneously, there was a civil lawsuit in progress. Depositions were taken in the civil lawsuit of the two deputies I mentioned, Powers and Dietrich. And so those then became available to the sheriff's office and also to ILRO as we considered the case. We did have some delays in this case because of that need to renegotiate the letters of agreement that I mentioned earlier. Some delay because there was a pending civil lawsuit and we wanted to see the depositions from that civil lawsuit and anything else we might learn from that lawsuit. At some times during this case, some of the deputies were unavailable. And at the end of the day, Deputy Dietrich left the employment of the sheriff's office, and so he's now not available to us at all for an interview, and so we never were able to interview him. We were working out new procedures because this was our first independent investigation as to how the sheriff's office would get materials to us at ILRO. Those went slowly. But I do think in the future, we're going to see the evidence come over from the sheriff's office faster than we did in this case. And then the final delays that we had were working out how and where we would interview sheriff's deputies, which ILRO had never done before. And we received a lot of cooperation from the sheriff's office on many issues relating to how to interview deputies, where to interview deputies, who would interview the deputies, how subpoenas to set up those interviews would be written up and served. And now all those processes are available for future cases. But at the end of the day, the deputies, the three deputies we tried to interview ended up still not providing us with meaningful statements. Dietrich was unavailable and then left the sheriff's office, so he wasn't available. Powers and the sergeant who was supervising these two on that day and immediately after the shoot, whose name is Burke, chose to exercise, as they're entitled to, their Fifth Amendment rights to not self-incriminate. Now, they hadn't exercised those rights in the previous interviews I talked about, but they did with ILRO. This is a very ordinary thing to happen in these kinds of cases, and the usual remedy is that we ask the sheriff, or in police cases, a chief of police, to order these people to talk anyways. That then protects them from their statements being used against them if they were being criminally prosecuted. That's a standard procedure everywhere I've ever worked in, pretty much in every agency in California that I know of. But in this case, our sheriff declined to make that order. And as far as we know, he's the only chief executive of a law enforcement agency that's ever done that in California. So we were unable to ultimately get statements from these two. And that'll be an ongoing issue. We'll talk about that some more in our presentation on September 22nd. We ended up looking at 6 main things in this case. We looked at de-escalation. We looked at the use of deadly force by Deputy Dietrich. That's the shooting that ultimately killed Mr. Pelaez Chavez. We looked at the use of the taser by Deputy Powers. We looked at the supervision of the situation by Sergeant Burke. We looked at how the witness deputies, that's Powers and Dietrich, were or were not sequestered, meaning kept apart and not talking to people after the shooting happened. And finally, we looked at a publicly released critical incident video the sheriff's office put out after the shooting. And we concluded that there were, on the first issue, de-escalation, there were many efforts to de-escalate the situation by the deputies involved over the first hour or so that they were in touch with Mr. Pelaez Chavez. And many of those tools that they used during that time were commendable. But there were also some that were missed, and we would have liked to have asked the two deputies about why they used some but not others. Maybe there was good reason for that. Maybe it was an oversight. Maybe they didn't have enough training about it. Maybe they felt that those tools were not appropriate for some reason. We don't know the answers to those questions. That was more of a concern for Deputy Dietrich, who fired the fatal shots, than it was for Deputy Powers. But at the end of the day, we couldn't really get into those questions as well as we would have liked. These questions were not delved into in either the criminal case or the civil case because they're not as essential to the determinations in those cases as they are in our case. We also wanted to better understand why Deputy Dietrich used deadly force when he did. And it wasn't immediately obvious to us that at the time that he pulled the trigger that Mr. Pelaez Chavez presented a deadly threat. And there were some questions we would have liked to have asked about that to understand it better, but we couldn't get that information because he was not available for interview. We took a look at the use of the taser by Deputy Powers, and we thought that was appropriate. We had far fewer questions for him about that issue based on his statements in the civil case and the statement he gave to the criminal investigators. That probably was the appropriate thing to do, and we agreed with the sheriff's office that Deputy Powers was acting in policy with respect to using the taser. We would have liked to have asked the Sergeant Burke, about how he interacted with these deputies while they were pursuing Mr. Pelaez Chavez. The sheriff's office has a policy about pursuits and how they're supposed to be managed, but at the end of the day, we couldn't get answers about whether that policy was or was not followed. And this was an issue that also was not assessed in the criminal or the civil case. We also looked at this issue of sequestering deputies Powers and Dietrich at the end of the interaction. So when Sergeant Burke arrived on the scene after the shooting happened, we would have expected by sheriff's office policy that he separate the two and make sure they not talk about what happened until they're interviewed. That didn't happen immediately, and there did seem to be a fair bit of conversation going on between them all during that time. We would have liked to have interviewed all three of them about their understanding of that rule so we could understand better if there was a violation of that rule or if they were following their training, when they kept talking about the incident at the beginning. And we don't have an answer to that question right now. And again, that's not an issue that was assessed in the criminal or the civil cases. We also concluded that the critical incident video that the sheriff's office put out to the public immediately after the shooting was inaccurate and misleading in its description of some of the events, particularly the information that was available to the deputies while they were pursuing Mr. Pelaez Chavez, and also its description of what he was doing with a rock at the time that he was shot. And in that regard, not only did we think that video misinformed the public about what happened, but we had some concerns that its presence out there in the media and the fact that the deputies involved had watched that video themselves several times might have altered their memory or corrupted their recollection about what actually happened. We also reviewed the sheriff's office own inquiry into these issues. We noted that the things we couldn't ask about were not asked about in that administrative review. And in that review, the sheriff's office did not interview these deputies at all. And we thought that was a shortcoming. But we also agreed that some other issues were done, some other events occurred correctly. So the use of handcuffs, providing of medical aid, notifications to start the independent investigations, the debriefings that happened afterwards, we thought were all appropriate and correct. So we'll have opportunity to get into all of these issues in more depth when we do our town hall. And if people are interested in, asking more questions about them or really digging into these in depth, that would be a good place to do it. We'll have opportunity for a curated or moderated Q&A during that, and it'll also be presented with Spanish translation. That's everything I've got for this presentation. I know that's a lot, but I hope you'll think about some of those issues before we have our Monday, September 22nd town hall.
What time is that?
6:30.
6:30? Is it Zoom
Yes,
only?
yes,
Is that in person and Zoom?
only Zoom.
Oh, so
Any questions from CAC members?
So many questions. Should we just email you questions so you can prepare like those answers for that presentation, or do you want to do
Sure.
that?
Sure, that'd be fine. That would actually help us scope the presentation a little bit. I can't promise we'll be able to or have time to answer every question, but if people send them in advance, that will help us scope the presentation a little better.
Other questions? Okay, we'll open it up for public comment, and we won't go into responses to questions, but just like Nate asked Director Alden, if there are questions that you think you would like responses to as best as John is able to provide at the September 22nd meeting, please provide them during your public comment time, and we have 3 minutes per person. Go ahead, Jim, we'll start with you.
Jim Duffy, Living Grounds Park, thanks for taking my comments. My comments are more directed to the CAC. I'm very disappointed that Sheriff Ingram is the only chief executive of the law enforcement agency. In California, who declined to compel testimony during an independent investigation and trigger library protections. And I'm not ready to ask you to do this now, but I'm probably gonna send you an email and ask you to do it next month. I think you should formally censure Sheriff Ingram for taking that position. And I also think you should pass a resolution on the Board of Supervisors to censure Sheriff Ingram for taking that position. It's totally against Measure P, which passed by 2/3 of the voters. There's no excuse for this, other than, and this is not a good excuse, they're following the directions of these attorneys, Raines, Lucius, Stern, Emperor, Palpatine, et al., who are just, this is a horrible law firm that the DSA uses and is responsible for more bad policing in California than anybody else, in my opinion. Secondly, I'm gonna ask you guys probably when you hold your annual get together to do a potential ad hoc and critical incident videos. Because I think they started off okay, each time there's one, they keep seeing how far they can get away with twisting the narrative. And this one is just horrible. The report did a really good job of showing all the lies. It was very nice to call them misstatements or whatever, but they were just lies in that video, and that's problematic. Thanks for taking my phone.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? That's Susan.
I just want to second Jim's request that there be a censure of the sheriff. It's interesting, it is the only one who has not compelled, at least that we know of, testimony from deputies. It immediately triggered a memory for me. Because I then read in the New York Times, different issue, is about ICE wearing masks. And there was an expert on that subject, interviewed, who said, this does not happen anywhere. Law enforcement in the United States, to our knowledge, has never used a mask. And I went, oh, except Sonoma County Sheriff's deputies at the jail when they were yard counseling, they were in masks. So already an office that claims to be better than most. Now we have 2 incidents of being the only example that we know of to do something that they really shouldn't be doing. So, I just wanted to put it out there that, this is important and people need to care about it and we need to really look into it. Thank you.
Other comments?
Yeah, I guess my question and concern relates to the sheriff not compelling testimony. Because it sounds like that's standard operating procedure. And I just wonder how Measure P would ever be implemented if the sheriff was to keep that position. So it makes me concerned about how the will of the voters is gonna be implemented. We already have a case where a farm worker was killed, and we're talking about this over 2 years into the process. And that's not the voters' intent of the civilian oversight and the kind of transparency that they were looking for, that they demanded when they had that kind of a vote. Remember, this was during COVID, folks. I mean, we were all shut in our houses, but people still came out to vote, to say they needed that, they wanted that. That was the response to the horrendous killing of Andy Lopez. If this is the best we can do to respond to that, I just don't think that's gonna be good enough. And I hope we never have a situation like this that needs to get investigated. But if we do, we need to do better than this, and the sheriff needs to step up. And if the sheriff isn't gonna do that, then I think the voters are gonna need to figure out what their next step is. Because that was not their intent.
Thank you. Any other comments from people in the room? And if you are a member of the public and you'd like your comments translated to the CAC, you can provide your comments in Spanish if you feel comfortable doing so. Okay, we'll move on to comments from attendees online. We don't have hands raised. If you do want to provide a comment, please raise your hand now. Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment on that.
Chair, could I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
I really appreciated the announcement you made, giving people the opportunity to ask questions in Spanish. But on my end, I only heard that announcement made in English, and I'm wondering if we should say that in Spanish. Or maybe it was said and I just can't hear it on this end of the line.
Yeah,
You did.
I asked him twice.
Great. Okay, awesome. Glad to hear that. Thank you.
And I'll just add, in Spanish. En cualquier momento que nosotros estemos pidiendo comentarios, ustedes pueden usar la interpretación que él está dando para dar sus preguntas en el momento que las pedimos y él nos las traducirá a nosotros en inglés. Okay.
O comentarios.
O comentarios, sí. Gracias. Okay, so we'll close that item and then we're at item 7 now, adjournment for ad hoc committee, working meetings, and it's 7:10. So do people want to take a 30-minute recess or maybe shorten it to 20 minutes? Yeah? Okay, we'll recess right now, 7:10, and come back at 7:30 for a quick report out. And then proceed with the remaining parts of the agenda. Thank you, everyone.
But the 19th, I want to.
Okay, so thanks everyone. We're reconvening at 7:30. And we will move on to item 9. CAC committee reports, and we'll start with community engagement.
Communication, that's not.
Because we're fully engaged.
Thank you. Racial and Identity Profiling Act.
I guess I can go. We are still midstream with that. We need to get a response from the sheriff on a policy suggestion and draft a letter to the RIPA board with some input also from the sheriff's office. And those are our next steps, which we hope to have that stuff done in the next couple weeks. So
Yes. Policy recommendations review, K9.
Well, as you know, we met with the sheriff and we talked about that. We went through, that we had a bunch of recommendations. And he did agree that he would address some of them. And so then they went ahead and they revamped their policy. We had asked if we could please have a role in that and see a draft, but the policy got written, but then Brent wrote back and said, look, you can come back anytime you want and recommend changes, more changes to this. So we could do that, but there were some, I would say, significant changes made. And they upgraded the mission statement, which we had asked them to do. They included stuff about, the release and recall considerations and requirements for forced bite release techniques and stuff like that. And significant things that we had asked for. And there were some that just really didn't seem to be addressed, but there was enough that was addressed that we were, happy with the outcome and the results. And we will be able to, I think, give a full report, kind of finalize what the ad hoc has done probably next month and probably close it out. I
Okay,
would say, yeah.
that sounds great. And we don't need email conversations like as part of the report, just. That was, I think, provided previously, just, how the first report was presented, then what happened from there, and then how you came to where you're at now, I think would be great. That's just my thought.
Okay,
It was a lot.
Yeah.
Anything else?
no, I think that's.
Community engagement about ICE?
We are revamping the flyer that we had drafted, and we'll have something to come back next month. Robin and I are going to meet next week.
If my calendar.
Yeah, she can get it done through.
Okay, thank you. And that was just for reports out. No actions are taken on these items. We'll move on to open time for public comment.
I had one thing on the last, on
Yes.
the ice thing, so. My supervisor, Hermosillo, did get back to me on the suggestion to her, and they're gonna give us an update, or me an update about their work on that ad hoc, and I'll report back to you all when I get that info.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay.
And this is, do you know the official name of the ad hoc that the Board of Supervisors decided to call
I
it?
can't remember exactly what they call it, but I'll get you that.
Okay, thank you. Do we get to comment on? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Public comment on any of the reports that were provided, and we'll start with you, Susan.
I just wanted to say that it seems that the success of the canine, the partial success of the canine policy should go to community engagement to then try to get that, like into the breast down grant, or, to make the public see that there is a value in the CMC that has actually accomplished this thing. So, yes, that's important for us to consider.
Good point.
Thank you. Any other comments? And I'll just say to that, that the report that the canine group has to present to the CAC has to adopt. And then when we do that, I think we'll add it to the newsletter and go from there. So we also need to take that step so that we can put it on the website as something that the entire CDC approved, and was involved in. Did you,
Back later.
okay,
For 12.
yeah, John, go ahead. Sorry.
It's okay. I was just going to add in response to that conversation that Nate brought up about the board ad hoc that's working on some of the issues he was concerned about and that others are concerned about is called the Immigrant Support Ad Hoc. And as he mentioned, that's Chair Hopkins and Vice Chair Hermosillo.
Okay, thank you. So we'll assume that at this time Nate is our liaison for that kind of, for that ad hoc, and if you are keeping track, I think we would all appreciate any updates that you have on the work that they're doing. Okay. Open time for public comment. This section is intended for non-action items from this agenda and for items not appearing on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the CAC. We'll give everyone 3 minutes. Are there any comments for open time? From members in the room? Go ahead, Susan.
I just want to build on the comment that I made at the last meeting about the importance of, letting the sheriff know what it is we expect from him in relation to ICE, and that it's got to be better than what it is, even if what it is right now is better than it is certainly in many states because of the laws that we have. But I think having seen his obstruction, that makes me nervous about what he will do. I don't know, but I feel that the fact that Trump is president emboldens him to be more defiant. Because the Supreme Court's gonna say, oh yeah, go ahead, kill anybody you want, you know? So I don't know that, you know, it's not gonna have an impact on him directly, because you can't do that. But in terms of, what you stand for and what you say, it was, you know, it would be taking orders from someone who is not legally allowed to even be a law enforcement officer. Because as a felon, he can't do that. And you would be taking orders from someone who's a felon. And it's totally, it's absurd on its face. And I think that, CAC needs to be clear about that in talking to the sheriff.
Thank you. Any other comments for open time? Seeing no hands raised online and no other comments in the room, will close public comment and move on to requests for future agenda items. Any requests from CAC members?
We should put the bylaws back on the agenda for an action. And I would like to put on the agenda, I don't know what the action might be, but I would like to put on the agenda an action item related to the either report on the status.
Okay.
So if we do feel the need to do something, we can do it
Yeah,
That's a good point.
in October and not in November or December or January.
Okay. Any other items? Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if this would be totally appropriate, but yeah, I was interested in exploring and talking more about the issue of possible censure for the sheriff. I don't know if that's something that fit into the structure as an official agenda item, but I do think that's something that's worthy of being discussed further.
okay. Any other items? Okay. I will say, related to requests for future agenda items, that when we determine if we should add something, one thing that I always consider is if we have, like, let's say the idea is to have the CAC approve a letter asking for something. So if your idea is for the CAC to approve a letter, draft that letter so that we're not doing like what we did today, where we're up in the air on like words and paragraphs on things. It's better if we all have a visual, and we can work through that during the meeting. So if you're going to draft a resolution or something for censorship, then, we would appreciate having that for the agenda packet. So that way the public and CAC members, can view that and we have a more productive discussion. And that will be for any item where you're considering something in writing that we should do, so it moves the process along, and we don't have to come back to the next meeting. To approve something, yeah.
This is changing the subject back to the, Nate being the liaison with the Board of Supervisors ad hoc. I don't know if that's, in any official capacity as a CAC member, or if it's just you as an individual, but I just wonder if that's something that we want to hear reported back on, and if it has to be an agenda item. I don't know if it has to be an agenda item if he reports back to us about what they're doing, because I think it's pretty significant. They're establishing this ad hoc.
Yeah, maybe, maybe you can ask me and see if they will give you regular updates and all that, and if they are committing to. Letting you be like the liaison, then we'll make sure that we have it on the agenda for, every meeting.
Okay, yeah, let's do that, and then if they can just send it to us, that would be just as, I don't need to play telephone.
Yeah.
Like a public correspondence.
Exactly,
Yeah, that would be good too, kind of like.
I'll suggest that.
Could provide
Exactly.
reports, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that might be better. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Just last follow up, what would you say would be the deadline for getting a draft?
I can get you that deadline. I'll email all the CAC with the deadlines for agenda submitting.
Yeah, for anything that you all want at the October meeting, Lizette will let you know by when we need that.
soon.
Yeah. CAC announcements. Are there any announcements, related to CAC business? Okay,
I have one.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know, I recently connected, with Jennifer over at the jail. She oversees the programs department there. So we're just starting a conversation about, potentially getting people from the community involved in volunteering to provide a variety of services and support for inmates. So I just want to let everyone know that that's something that's finally happening, and I'm excited about. And if anyone would be involved in that or being part of the conversation, you're welcome to be. And also, I know there's timing of when people get off ad hoc, so we have capacity to do new ones, but also if anyone would be interested in forming an ad hoc focused on jail detention, I would be very interested in doing that.
I think that's something that we can put on an agenda, so that's, yeah.
Sorry.
but,
Si alguien tiene interés en formarse parte de ese grupo, de los encarcelados, abórenme por favor para mencionar su interés para
okay. So similar to the discussion we had earlier, if there's an idea that you have and you're doing the work, which sounds like you are as a member of the CAC, then that information should be presented to the entire CAC. And so, that way we all are aware of the work that you're doing, because I don't know if anybody else on the CAC was. And typically, we have conversations about the ad hocs that we want to have for the year at the strategic planning workshop, which we had in February. And no one suggested that we have such an ad hoc, and we want to make sure that we have ad hocs that have SMART goals. So that we're proposing work that we are actually going to, do work on and accomplish. Because we kind of weren't doing that before, and that's why Rania came along and all of that. So this is one of the reasons that attendance is really important, and then ideas should be brought to the entire CAC or to the chair and vice chair, and we'll put it on an agenda for discussion. So I like the idea of, having an ad hoc on jail-related matters, and I think the whole CAC should talk about that, so we'll put it on next month's agenda for something to consider. Okay, anything else? Discussion of possible topics to publicize. This is where the CAC can bring up topics of interest to publicize in order to better communicate with the public, and those topics can go in the CAC and Islero newsletter. So if you have any ideas, but not now, please send them to Lizette. And now we're on item 14, adjournment. Our next meeting will be October 14th. I'm sorry, October 8th. At 6 p.m. here in this room. We look forward to seeing you all, and thank you so much for being here tonight. We're adjourned.